Welcome to the TRSM Academic Success Center's Coaching Circle on Final Exam Preparation. Before starting to study for your exams, it's important to make a plan. Here are the points that we're going to address in this presentation. Where do I stand? What do I need to make a plan for finals? How do I learn? Tips for the day of the exam, and where to get help. Before you make your study plan, it's important to stop and take a moment to see what's coming ahead. Revisit your course outlines and identify assignments and projects due over the next few weeks. The Academic Success Center offers a 4-month term calendar for students to use, both on our website under the Tip Sheets tab and in our center as printed handouts. Use the calendar to map out all of your deadlines, exams, and personal commitments. Post it in a visible place for easy reference. Assessing your performance in each course with the help of the Ryerson GPA calculator will give you an idea of where you stand in each class and will help you prioritize your studies. Remember to also check the course drop deadlines on the undergraduate calendar website under the Significant Dates page. If you're considering dropping a course, you may want to talk to your program office to clarify the implications of this decision and when you'd be able to retake the course should you so choose. In addition to knowing your current grades and setting grade goals for each of your exams, it's also important to keep in mind the format of your exams as well as the university's policy affecting your exams. The policy includes documentation needed to enter the exam room, permissible behavior during the exam, processes for missed exams, and so on. An inventory of your final exams, like the one shown here, will help you plan for your final exam season. Let's explore the example on this slide. Knowing the weight and content of the final exam will help you decide what topics you should prioritize. The content will inform if you need to prepare from the beginning of the course or from the midterm forward. If you're not studying or reviewing regularly, the content to review may have built up as the term nears its end. Remember that the different types of exams require different preparation and practice techniques. For example, studying for an exam with math-based questions, like our economics example here, would differ from preparing for a computer-based simulation for the business technology exam or essay questions for the politics exam. Developing a final exam inventory for each of your courses will help guide your studies. You may download this helpful handout from the Academic Success Center website under the Tip Sheet section. It's important to complete the inventory form for each course and to make sure all fields are filled in. The headings of the form will help familiarize you with the location, date, and time of your exam to avoid running around the day of the final exam. Use your course syllabus to make a list of all the topics studied and trace a line after the last subject that was evaluated during the midterm. Assess your knowledge of each topic by marking whether you already know it, need to learn it, or simply need to review it. If you know a subject, it's implied you are familiar with it and little review is needed. If you need to review a subject, it means that you understand it but need to spend more time going over it to have a full grasp of the content. If this is the case, you may need additional material and extra time to learn the subject. Most final exams tend to be cumulative, meaning you'll be evaluated on the entirety of the course content. If this is the case, you should devote more time studying the second half of the course, as you have previously been tested on the first half of the content, which now requires a review. In the rightmost column of your inventory, you should end up with a total number of hours needed to study for each course, which you will then spread over 2 weeks prior to your exams. Once you've created a term calendar and final exam inventory for each course, it will be helpful to add the necessary study time into a weekly planner to map out your time for each week. Make sure your weekly planner includes your recurring obligations plus the study time needed. This will become your master study plan. In this particular example, shown on the slide, the student has included all of their recurring commitments, such as class, work, and physical exercise, and divided their study time between class preparation and studying for final exams. As mentioned before, it's important to become familiar with the format of your exam and prepare accordingly. For multiple choice questions, it's important to read all the questions carefully and estimate how much time you have to respond to each of them. For example, if you have 100 multiple choice questions worth 1 point each, and it's part of a 2-hour exam worth 160 points total, then you should spend a maximum of 75 minutes on the multiple choice section. It's useful to answer the questions you know first and mark those you're unsure of to come back to later on. Finally, be aware of double negatives as they create an equivalent positive statement. For short answer questions, it's important to answer straight to the point and to keep in mind that the number of marks given for a question is often related to the number of points or items to include in your answer. So if a question is worth 20 points and you're asked to mention 2 ideas, each of them is going to be worth 10 points. For essay questions, it's useful to prepare an outline of your ideas. You'll need a thesis statement and a few supporting points that will become entire paragraphs. You will also need a conclusion that refers you to the thesis. Make sure to use connectors to link ideas in a logical sequence. For open book tests, it's often useful to study with a concept map that depicts connections between ideas. Make sure you also have your notes organized with an index, which will save you time during the exam in finding basic concepts. E-learning videos can be very powerful learning tools as they can demonstrate complex procedures and help explain difficult topics outside of the classroom. You can pause and re-watch them as many times as you need. Plus, they can be quite entertaining. Here's a list of some helpful YouTube channels and the various course topics they serve. The Academic Success Center has its own YouTube channel called RU Connected Learning, where you can currently find video tutorials for accounting, finance, and marketing courses, and we're still growing. This allows students to learn via several tools including mock tests and games. Lynda.com is a premier online learning company that produces video tutorials led by industry experts on a range of topics. You can use these tutorials to study for your courses. You can take entire learning paths and receive certificates of completion, or you may choose to take individual tutorials to learn specific skills. To access Lynda.com, please go to your my.ryerson.ca account under the Apps tab. Now that you have some helpful resources to help you learn and plan for your final exams, let's discuss the science of learning and how to study effectively. Research shows we learn in this ratio of 40-20-40. 40% is what we retain when we read before class, 20% when we go to class and actively participate, and 40% when we review afterward. Course outlines are a great tool to prepare before class, as they indicate the weekly content that will be taught. The more we review before class, the more we will be able to be engaged and participate in the lecture. Study groups and tutoring are both great ways to achieve that final 40%, as they guide you on reviewing content from the week and clarifying concepts or questions that may arise after class. There are 3 big processes that take place when we learn: encoding, storage, and retrieval. Encoding is our first contact with the information and usually happens through our senses, when we see or read, when we hear the professor lecture, and so on. The content is stored in our brain in tiny cells that connect to each other. These connections are called neuropathways. The more we stimulate them, the more we will remember. But when we do nothing to work on them, we forget what we'd learned. As they say, if you don't use it, you lose it. Finally, retrieval is our ability to find the information when we need to remember it, such as when we're taking a test. The more senses we involve when we study, the greater our ability to remember. There is a big difference between cramming and reviewing. When you review, you look at previously organized and understood material over a period of time. This is called spacing. You can use this when you prepare for class, when you attend and participate in your lectures, and when you go over course content periodically. This way, you'll become familiar with the subject and can build up your comprehension of it. Cramming, on the other hand, is the act of studying non-stop right before an exam. It usually involves reviewing notes rather than practicing. It also often involves cutting sleep to squeeze in more hours of study. When cramming, your brain gets overloaded with thousands of pieces of data. As a result, it's quite difficult to make long-lasting connections. It's like trying to squeeze all the information on your laptop into an 8GB USB key. It just doesn't work. Let's discuss the difference between understanding and memorizing. Let's look at this simple example. Business definition of the word tariff is a system of duties of imports and/or exports. If we give this definition to a 5-year-old, they may memorize it as a song or a poem. However, they won't necessarily understand what it is they're reciting. The problem is that many university students tend to study in this way, and when it comes time to write exams, students often fail to answer correctly if questions are formulated even slightly differently. Let's continue with this example. This is a question that might be used to test your understanding of the definition of tariff. Which one of the following are types of taxes? Notice how the word taxes was not mentioned on the actual definition of tariff. However, if you understood the definition, you'll be able to answer this question. Let's try to answer this question in a logical way. This will also be a good opportunity to practice multiple choice questions. We can get clues from the way the question is formulated. In this case, we can deduce that the answer must be plural. So, we have two answers that involve more than one choice, option D and option E. If we go for option E, all of the above, we have to give the true-false test to each option to eliminate the wrong answers. Option A, goods and services, is true. That's a sales tax. Option B, inflation, is false. Inflation is not a tax. Instead, it's a sustained increase in the general price level of goods and services in an economy over a period of time. Option C, duty, is true. Duty is a type of tax imposed by the customs authority on imports and sometimes exports to raise revenue and/or to protect domestic industries. So, the correct answer is D. Instead of memorizing the definition, studying them with these steps will not only help you understand and put them into context, but it will also be easier to remember. Step 1 is to make sure you understand every single word in that definition. In this case, duty. Step 2 is to come out with an example or fact where you can apply the definition. In this example, the US first imposed the tariff to Cuba in 1959 after the triumph of the Cuban Revolution. Step 3 is to draw an image that represents the example and attach it to the word. In this case, we have the branding of the Ministry of Tourism in Cuba, which is in most souvenirs and memorabilia in the island that will help us remember the example and definition. However, if you've not been to Cuba, we need to find an example that works for us and that in our heads screams Cuba. For some people, this image would be an island or a place of vacation. For others, it may be a 1950s car or a sketch of Castro. Regardless of what this may be, the idea is to find an image that you can associate with the content. So when you're writing an exam, you can visualize the doodle or sketch attached to the word. This exercise seems so mundane, but is in fact a powerful strategy called dual coding that stimulates our brain via two channels, words and visuals. There are other strategies that can help you maximize your study time and to ensure that you can both understand and remember. The first one is called elaboration. As you study, try to make connections between different ideas to explain how they work together. You may take two ideas and think of the ways in which they're similar or different. You may also describe how the ideas you're studying apply to your own experiences or memories. The second is retrieval practice. For this, you may put away your class material and see how much you remember by writing or sketching. You may also do as many practice tests as you can. If you don't have access to practice tests, try making your own and trading them with a friend. The third, spaced practice. It's ideal to space your study material over a period of time for an exam. For example, 8 hours spread over a week is better than the same 8 hours all at once. The fourth, dual coding. Combining words and visuals as we saw early on in this presentation. You may use a cartoon strip, a diagram, timeline, or an infographic to visually represent information and aid retrieval. The fifth, interleaving. Switch between ideas during a study session. Don't study one idea for too long. You may go back over the ideas in different order to strengthen your understanding. The sixth is concrete examples. Check examples for your class and from the textbooks, as well as try to come up with examples on your own. The idea is to see how what you're studying may be applied in different situations. On the day of your exam, apply the Bravo strategy. B. Breathe. Arrive early, relax, take deep breaths to lower your heart rate. R. Review. Don't pick up your pen until you've finished reading the questions. Get an overall sense of the test. Identify familiar, unfamiliar, easy and difficult questions. A. Answer. Read questions carefully. Follow instructions. Answer easy questions first. V. Verify. Take a few minutes after each answer to check it. Don't rush. O. Oversee. Put the pen down. Take some time to review your work. So where can you go to get help? There are several resources at your disposal that can help you maximize your chances for success in your finals at Ryerson. Visit your program advisor or program office if you have any questions about your probation contract, academic standing, or course choices and restrictions. Tutoring and study groups are great resources to help you prepare for your exams. The earlier you go to them, the more you may benefit. The ASC study groups review content from the week with the help of a facilitator. which will help you with a periodic review of a subject. The tutoring sessions also happen in small groups. However, you must review on your own prior to coming to have a clear idea of what you don't understand and need help with. You may also create your own study group with your friends or classmates. However, this requires discipline. You may also visit us at the Academic Success Center and ask to meet with a peer academic coach or book an appointment with a learning strategist. Thank you for your time and all the best in your exams.